Welcome everyone to Jolly Jingles. I'm so excited to get started. This is week 1 and these are the 3 ornaments we'll be doing. Now I have put timestamps down in the description so you know where each ornament is in case you're just doing one of these, and that way you can just go straight to it. So enjoy painting. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll talk to you later. All right. Well, welcome to Jolly Jingles Ornament Challenge. And for this week, the first 3 patterns that we're going to be painting on are done on these paper tags, which are really easily available. You can get them anywhere like Michael's. You can get them at Hobby Lobby. You can get them at Joann's. There's all kinds of places where you can get these, or you can order them online. They're just like a 2.5 by 5.1 size paper tag, and they're like a craft paper. Now I've painted these already. This is light buttermilk, and these 2 are celery. And what I did was, with one of them, I used avocado and then some of the light buttermilk. And while the celery was wet, I went ahead and just kind of slap some avocado around the outside edges, and some of the light ivory, just barely put a little bit in the middle of that one. Okay, I've got my design on my card. This is Jingle All the Way, and I've got it on there, and I stenciled some snowflakes using Lori Spelt's, I think it's 283, BCS 283, that has the snowflakes on it. So I used that, and I did the larger snowflakes in avocado, and then I did the smaller ones with bleached sand. And now I'm going to use avocado, and I'm going to shade or float around the outside of my design on here and around the outside edges. So we've got him done as far as the floating around the edges and around the design. I did that with the avocado. And now I'm going to go in and I'm going to start base coating. I'm going to base coat the reindeer with milk chocolate, and then his antlers are dark chocolate. And then the ribbon around the bells is Santa red. And I'm going to start with that. So we're just going to be base coating. And I'm going over the nose. It really doesn't matter because it's going to be black later anyway. And I'll be able to see through this. All right, we're going to go ahead and shade around our reindeer. I'm going to be using bittersweet chocolate on the deer and the antlers, and then Napa red around the collar. right. Now I went ahead, I've got the red shaded with the Napa red on my collar, and I went ahead and stenciled in my bells. And the stencil I used, I ordered off Amazon, and I will link that below, and it will also be in the painting instructions, the link, so that you can order those if you want. Otherwise, I'm sure there's other bell stencils, or I will draw them on the pattern and you can just paint them in. But they turned out really cute. I'm going to go over them again, and I did that with marigold. I'm going to go over them again, and then I think I'm going to paint some gold glitter paint on them, or either some gold metallic paint. But I'll wait for that now because I want to go over these again with the marigold. And then I'm going to take my dry brush, which is just a lunar blender, and I've got some cocoa on my palette, and using a dry brush, I'm just going to get a little bit of that cocoa on there and wipe a lot of it off. And then I'm going to highlight the inside, or just kind of dry brush a little on the inside of the ears, just to lighten that up a little bit on the inside. Not a lot, but you can tell it's there. And then I'm also going to dry brush a little bit on the top of the ears, just a little bit. And I'm also going to dry brush just a little bit on the antlers to make it look like he's got some velvet on those antlers, and just highlight them a little bit. And I'm just going just kind of up each one. I noticed I missed a spot when I was shading. And if you want to brighten it up a little bit, just add a little more. Like so. Okay. All right. So then I'm going to go with some lamp black, and I'm going to paint in my nose. Okay, and then we're just going to let that dry. I'm going to take my liner brush, and I'm going to add just a few little hairs up on the top of his head up here with the cocoa and some of the light buttermilk, I think. And just a few. Doesn't have to be very many. Just to give him some personality here. Okay. Just give him a little personality. Okay, I think my gold bells are dry, so I'm going to go back over them again. Okay. And we'll let that dry. Okay, so on my bells, I decided to go back in and shade the marigold with some terracotta. And then I took some lemon yellow and just scrubbed on, some dry brushed on some little highlights at the top of my bells with the lemon yellow. So just lightly some terracotta on there for shading, and then just lightly the lemon yellow. Well, I went ahead and just used glitter. It's the Craft Twinkles Gold Glitter Paint from Deco Art. And I went ahead and did my bells. As you can see, the glitter on those. Yeah. And then I, excuse me, I floated a shadow on the nose with the light buttermilk and added a C stroke with Snow White. And I dotted the eyes. And then I just added some black lines with for the mouth and the eyebrows. But you can do those with ink if you want. I just did it with my script liner. But so anyway, that's him. I'm going to let that dry. And now we're going to finish our reindeer with some drawing or some fine details. And I'm just going to go around my guy. Okay, and then I'm just going to go around the edges. Okay, and on the reindeer, it says, jingle all the way. And again, I'm going to use my small marker because I just don't want my letters to overtake my ornament here. And this one kind of goes over that tag, so just be careful doing it. And I lost the lid to my pen. Oh, there it is. Okay, and again, I'm going to do the black dots. Like so. He turned out really cute. Okay, I've repainted my bleach sand tag with this Provence Sky Blue. It's a new one. I haven't used this before. And then I took some deep midnight blue, and I have a finishing brush or a filbert, whatever you want to call this. And I think it's literally called a finish brush, but it's a 3/4 size. But I put a lot of water on it and then got some of the water off. I tapped on some of my deep midnight blue, and I came through and just really lightly did some just kind of slip slap strokes through here with that. And you can see it's really thin. And it kind of makes it look like wind. I want it to look windy in the background. So that's kind of what I did. I did it at an angle. So hopefully you can see that. And I just kind of let that, it was pretty wet. So now I'm going to let that dry. And then I'm going to use my deep midnight blue, and I'm going to go around the edges. I'm going to put my design on there, and then I'm going to float around my edges in my design. But I like that windy look on the background. This is going to be a snowy type scene, so I like the wind on there. Well, at least that's what it looks like to me. All right, so this is the design we're putting on this one. It says, let it snow, and these cute little snowmen on here. Use our deep midnight blue, and we're going to shade around our design and our edges, and then we'll add those snowflakes because I want them on top of the background. All right, let's get started. And I've already transferred my snowman onto, I didn't do the lettering, just the snowman, onto my card. I'll start at the bottom down here. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but working on paper, your paint dries a lot faster than if you're working on wood. So if you're going to use your mop brush, have it handy. I just like to fade those out a little bit. So there's our little design here. We've got it all outlined. We've got the card done on the outside. Now we're going to go ahead and stencil some dots in the background for the snow. And I'm just going to use a a notebook size. This is like a 3-ring binder notebook size dot. So any piece of paper will work. You don't have to have a stencil, but this one just happens to be on a stencil that I'm using. So, and I'm going to do some of these with some winter blue, and then I'm going to do some with bleached sand because I don't want it to be really, really bright. At least not yet. And I'm going to do them lightly. I don't want them on there really thick. Using a dry brush to stencil with. This brush is starting to look pretty ratty, but it'll work. And just randomly, lightly stencil some of those dots. Okay, so there's the ones. We can barely tell the difference. But that's okay. We don't want them to be bright anyway. Okay, so now I'm stippling on some snow white onto my snowman. And I'm just basically going around like the outside edges and the middle and going around those buttons and the nose. Just kind of lightly. I want some of that blue to show through, especially around the buttons and the nose. So just kind of lightly, and then you can always go over it again later after we do the buttons and the nose. But just get that base stipple in there, just where you kind of have a fuzzy looking snowman. Now I'm grabbing some of the Canyon Orange, and I'm going to paint those noses in for my snowman. I did go back and draw in the buttons and the noses on there so that I could see them a little better. And now I'm just going in and base coating my noses with the Canyon Orange. Now I'm just taking a little bit of that cotton candy, and I'm really lightly, I wiped a lot of it off of my brush. I'm just really lightly going to stipple in some cheeks for my snowman. And it doesn't have to be dark. You just want a little bit of a light pink there. I also did go ahead and paint my buttons with lamp black. And they're just kind of, they're not perfectly round. They just look like little coal buttons, as you can see there. Now I'm going to grab some of that Georgia clay, and I'm going to shade the bottom edges of my noses and around the larger base side of the nose too, just to give it a little bit more shaded look to it. Now I'm going to go back with some of that snow white, and I'm going to add some more layers of that onto the snowman, just where I want it to be a little brighter in some areas, still leaving some of that blue around the buttons and the nose so that you can still see that. It makes it look shaded around there from the base color. So just kind of add some stippled white along anywhere you think it needs brighter areas on your snowman. I did go in here and add the dots for the eyes with the end of my paintbrush, or you can use a stylus. And now I'm just putting on some C strokes onto the buttons with my Snow White. Now with some winter blue, I'm just going in and shading or putting a light float where the arms are going to be. And it's just really light. I don't want it to really show up too much, but I want an area for the arms to come out of. So that's what I'm doing here. And I just did that with winter blue. You can see they're pretty light. I just added some thin milk chocolate lines for the arms. Just random, they don't have to go in any certain position or anything. I just put little arms on them. And I'm using my script liner brush. Now for spattering the tag, I took my old scruffy toothbrush, or you could use a spatter brush, but I like using my old toothbrushes. And I just spattered around everywhere the whole tag. Nothing in particular, just the whole tag. And I just spattered that with Snow White. And then what I'm going to go back and do when I get done with this, I'm going to go in with a toothpick and I'm going to put in some white dots. We're going to just add just a few details, not a lot on him, but and I'm using a Sharpie fine tip. Just going to give him a couple little eyebrows and really light little mouths, not much. Gonna just barely kind of go over the noses. And you don't have to add the detail if you don't want to add the lines. If you like it just plain without the lines, you don't have to add those. I'm not going to be adding anything to the snowmen themselves other than what I did on their face. And then for the lettering on the snowman, I'm basically just writing that in myself. If you want to trace yours on, you can. And just kind of make your letters fun. You don't have to make them straight. Just let it snow. And then I'm going to take the end of my paintbrush and I'm going to go and I'm going to add some little black dots to my letters. Like so. There you go. And like I said, you can paint those letters if you want. You can use a wider marker if you want your letters to be big. I kind of want my letters to stand out, but not take away from the snowman. So I did them with the smaller marker. but you can do them with a bigger marker if you want. Okay, our next tag is the Hohoho tag, and I'm using that same Lori Spelt stencil. I have already base coated this tag with celery green, and with the stencil, I did the light buttermilk for the dry brushing and the stars, and then I used avocado for the dots, or any of the smaller stuff on there. And then I'm going to transfer my design to this. So there's the Hohoho design. I'm going to transfer that on, and then I'm going to shade around my design and around the edges of the card with avocado. So that's what we're going to do next. All right, so here I'm basing the card, or the Santa hat, with Santa red. And then I'm just kind of going in here and touching up, and I'm doing the gray for the beard and the mustache. Now the gray that we used was, I think it was slate gray. Yes, slate gray. And I'm painting the mustache and the beard with this. And this is basically your base color underneath your beard. So you'll just go ahead and do a good coat of that on there. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and base in the hat brim and the pom-pom. And I base coated these with buttermilk, and then I shaded around them with terracotta. And then after that dries, we're going to stipple those with some snow white. Now I've already base coated the hat, the brim, and the beard, and I base coated the face. We did the face with natural buff, and then we will go back and shade that with terracotta. And I did add another coat of red, Santa red, to the hat to brighten it up a little bit. Now I'm using some Napa red, and I'm going to shade around my hat, just around all the edges on the hat. And then once we're done with that, and that has a chance to dry, I'm going to highlight that hat with cotton candy. And we're going to use terracotta to shade the face and the hat brim. And then eventually I'm going to go back in and stipple that hat brim with some snow white. But the terracotta is what I'm using to shade around it here. And you won't see that dark line and stuff on there when you get done, because you're going to be stippling that snow white over it, but you'll have a shadow with the terracotta, and it looks really good that way. Okay, now for the beard, what we're going to do is we're going to use, this is my 1/2-inch lunar blender, and I'm going to use it first. And then on top of that, we're going to use this 3/8 filbert grainer brush. These you can see, I don't know if you can see in the camera, the bristles. See the grainer brush, how you can see those split ends on that? They're great for doing beards and hair and that type thing. So that's what we're going to use for the beard. Now remember the blender, we're going to use dry. So don't get that one wet, and we're going to use it first with some Snow White on the beard. So I've got some Snow White on my lunar blender, and I'm just gonna kind of dry brush this on to the areas of the beard first, and then I'll do the mustache on top of that. But you can see it's just, I mean, I'm not covering that total area. I want to see the gray underneath it. So just lightly kind of dry brush that in those areas. And like I said, you're going to want to see the gray, so don't just completely base coat it in. And I'm trying to go in the direction I want my beard to go, which with dry brushing, I mean, you can still do, but you'll see how it looks when we get done. Just kind of scratching it out towards the end there. And just kind of blend it out. Notice when I dip in my paint, I'm always taking off some of that paint because I don't want it too thick on there. You can always go back and touch it up. And don't worry if you get on your red hat, you can always go back and touch that up too. So see, you can kind of see that there. Still see the gray in there, and you can always go back in, and when you do your beard with the other brush, you'll notice you're going to fill in some of those areas. So don't worry about them. Now I'm going to do the mustache. This brush was a little bit big. I probably should have had the smaller lunar blender, but I didn't have it with me. So I used the bigger one, and I end up using the tip of it kind of, or the side of it, so that I don't just get it everywhere. And again, leaving that gray so you can see it through there. Still going in the direction that I want my mustache to go. See? Now, before I go and do the rest of my beard, I'm going to go ahead and use my stippler here, and I'm going to stipple in the white, the Snow White, on my hat brim. And just lightly, you don't have to cover it all up. You still want to see a little of that shading under there. You can always go back in and add more if it's not, as bright as you want it to be. Kind of like that. And I will probably go back in and brighten that up some more. You just got to wait till it dries. Okay, now I've loaded my grainer brush. This is a 3/8 filbert grainer brush, and I've loaded it with Snow White, dabbed off some of the paint, You want paint on there, but you don't want blobs of paint on there because you want those lines to show. And I'm starting with that edge over there on the other side of the hat first. I'll start with this edge. And then I'll work my way around. I'm doing the beard first because I want my mustache on top of the beard. And notice I have to get paint on my brush almost every time I do a stroke. I go back and get more paint. Almost. It's a really fun brush to work with. You just have to practice with it. Got a little bit of brown on my brush from the terracotta there, but not enough to worry about. Just going to add a few more lines here and there. And again, on my mustache, I want to go the same direction as, I wanted the dry brushing to go as well. Just kind of being careful. I don't worry too much about the nose. I mean, I don't want to get a bunch of paint on there, but you can go back and touch it up, which I probably will. Go back and touch up my terracotta shading on my nose because I know I got some white on there. There, that looks good. I'm just going to leave it like that. Now I'm just going to go in here with my stippler brush, and I took a little bit of that Santa red, or I am taking it, and I dried it off on my brush to where it's just going to be really light. I don't want a lot of paint on that brush. And I'm just, dibbling those in there, stippling those cheeks in there. See that? You can just barely see it. It's not real bright. Just enough to add in some little rosy cheeks. Now I grabbed my stencil brush and some Snow White, or some, actually not Snow White, I'm sorry, the light buttermilk. And I'm just stippling in the pom-pom for my hat. And I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to stipple the white, the Snow White on top of that. I'm not going to shade this. I think what I'll do is I'll stipple a little tiny bit of that terracotta on there. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And then not real dark. I just want a little bit for the background. And then I'm going to stipple some Snow White on top of this. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stipple on my eyebrows. I'm going to use that little stippler brush. I just got some Snow White, and I'm just going to carefully stipple on some little eyebrows. See, there you go. Just some little eyebrows. Now I'm going to go back in and I'm going to float just a really light highlight of that Santa red on my nose. Just so he has a little bit of a pink nose. Not much. Just like so. Just a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to highlight my hat. I've got a little bit of cotton candy, real light. I had to add more water to my brush because I just want this really light on his hat. And it'll dry lighter than it looks right here. But I just used cotton candy for this. Just to kind of highlight that hat. I've got the end of my paintbrush and I'm going to go ahead and dot my eyes. I'm using lamp black for the eyes on my Santa. And just little dots. You can do this with a stylus or the end of your paintbrush, whatever you want to use. And now that I've got my eyes on there, I'm just taking my script liner and I'm going to do a C stroke on my Santa Claus's nose. And a little dot. Add a little bit on the hat, just to add a little bit more highlight to the hat. Now what we're going to do is get that stencil brush back out, and I'm going to stipple some Snow White onto the pom-pom at the end of my hat, since that's dry now. I'm going to leave the edges because I want that color to show through on the edges a little bit. So most of that Snow White's going to be in the middle. So now that he's pretty much dry, I'm going to go ahead with my liner brush. I'm using that Sharpie fine tip. I'm just going to go around my edges of the hat. I'm probably not going to do a whole lot on his face other than just the details to the hat band. I'm going to add some little hatch marks and in the pom-pom and go around the outer edges. So I am going to add some little eyelashes, but not very many, just a couple on each side. I'm not going to go around his nose and his face. I'm just going to leave it the way it is because I just like it that way. And I'm afraid if I go around the nose, it's going to make the nose just stick out. And I don't want to do that. And I don't want to go around where my fuzz is on my hat. So when I get done with the line work on this one and I add the little hatch marks to the hat brim and to the pom-pom, I'll be pretty much done with Santa. All I have to do is add the lettering and my dots, which I'll probably do off camera, but they're done the exact same way as we did the other two cards. Just using that same thin Sharpie pen and then using the end of my paintbrush for the dots on the letters. So that's it. You're done. I hope you enjoyed these 3 ornaments. I did add the timestamps, so you should be able, if you're not doing one of these ornaments, you should be able to go to that timestamp and see that one. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Have fun.